economic aspects. So imagine what we'll be doing without electricity, without light bulb, and without automobile. Probably we'll be sitting at home, getting bored, cannot travel, like we cannot go outside. So that's the impact of innovation. And we will not be having this meeting if we people didn't innovate computers, internet, etc. So I think innovation is the key. Another good example is global positioning satellites, GPS. So without that, we'll be lost in the roads and we'll be searching where to go. So those are the kind of key innovations. Cell phone is another one. So currently, US is planning to spend about $100 billion over the next 5 years on a project called Endless Frontier Act. So this is mainly to maintain the global leadership in technology and innovation. And one of they have identified 10 topics, and one of them is advanced communication systems. So we're all working towards that, and in the near future, we'll know what is the scope, and a lot of companies are working towards that. And maybe I'll present some of them if there is time, but otherwise, I think we'll start. So definitions. So there's several definitions for innovation. So the one I like, and so it's actually translating an idea or invention. So invention is a product of innovation. So into goods or services. So that has value to the value to the society, and the customers will pay. So that's one definition of innovation. I think to be called innovation, idea must be replicable at a cheaper cost and must satisfy certain specific needs. So IEEE mission statement, if you read, I think this is IEEE put as a mission statement. The core purpose is to foster technological innovation and excellence for the benefit of humanity. So it shows that how IEEE takes very seriously the innovation. And whatever innovation you do, it has to benefit to the mankind, benefit of mankind. So today I'm going to talk about this agenda. So what is innovation? So why people innovate, and what are the motivation behind it? And paper versus patent. I think people are always uh, debating paper is more valuable, patent is more valuable. The answer is both are valuable. So it depends on who is doing it. How to innovate and get a patent or trade secret. So as I said, invention is the end product of innovation. So once I think you do some innovation, at the end I think you want to apply for a patent or trade secret. Company likes both of them. So trade secret is also as valuable as a patent, but it's limited to the company. So sometimes your company may not be willing to share the information outside. So though of course patent is valid for a certain number of years, 20 years or so. So then I'll show you some examples of innovation. So I started actually most of my work on satellites, but now I'm doing more on ground and aircrafts. So I'll show some examples. So what is innovation? I think it's a big term. So innovation is not imitation. So it's not like you imitate some product which is already developed and try to make some minor modifications or improvements. So that's not the case. So if you do that, of course, you won't get the patent. Examiner will say this is not significant enough to be given a patent status. Out of box idea or concept resulting in a product or concept or method. So basically, it could be out of box idea which people haven't done before, or a new idea or creative thought, new imagination in the form of device or method. It doesn't have to be a product, hardware product, but it could be a software, it could be a method, uh, which leads to better solutions and meeting new requirements. So invention is the result of the innovation. So once you finish the innovation, you decide whether you want to apply for an invention. Inventions are often protected by patents or trade secrets. So this is here in US, USPTO is the Patent and Trademark Organization. So they basically monitor all the patent applications, and then they'll assign each application to a examiner. So examiner will review. So typically whole process takes about 3 years. So it's a very extensive process. Sometimes examiner may not like it. So then he'll say the prior art actually says similar things. So what is different between that and your patent? So you have to work with the your attorney as well as the examiner to answer the questions. So at the end, after a couple of interactions, he may agree, and then he might sort of issue the patent. So innovation typically happens by necessity. Most cases, I think it is basically for all the people in the industry, it is the necessity. Sometimes it could happen by an accident. You might get some crazy thought in the middle of the night, and then you go back in the morning and then try to work on it, and it might be a good idea, so it could be patentable. So it also happens by planning. So you might sort of decide, okay, I want to work on this area, and then plan accordingly. And after some time, you might sort of get good results, and you want to apply for a patent. So it could happen by necessity, accident, or planning. End product of invention is an improved product, a patent, or a trademark. So I think most importantly, what is for the people working in the industry, what is most important is improved product. So first, I think you have to work for the company, and you have certain deadlines. So you have to meet those deadlines. And then only I think once I think you develop the product, it meets all the specs, all the requirements, then you think of working as a patent or trademark. So that's basically sideline. So I said innovation is easy. Actually, we all have innovative minds. Only thing is we have to put our thoughts, channelize them through properly in a more focused way. So, and then of course, combine that with some hard work, and you will be able to innovate new things. I mean, you're all, a lot of people are young. I think I'm almost about to retire. So I just want to pass on my experience. So don't take it as the rule, but I think take it as an advice from my side. So this is actually the quote I like. I think I have mentioned this several meetings. So innovation distinguishes leaders from followers. So this is from Steve Jobs, ex-CEO of Apple, who is no more now. But he doesn't have a basic degree, but the amount of innovation he did for Apple is amazing. So we all have iPhones, and we should be really grateful to him. Why innovate? So the company wants sometimes to apply for a patent because they want to protect it and they want to get royalties. So if some other company they cannot copy the patent which you already have. So if they want to use it, they have to pay royalties to whatever your company. And secondly, it has societal benefits, which is much more. If your product is used in the society, like a new product for space or ground or aircrafts, I think it gives you much more satisfaction. So advanced result is advanced technology or product. So you can advance the technology, you can come up with a new product, you can invent a new product, and most importantly, professional satisfaction. So it's basically engineering pride. If you're an engineer working in a company, it gives you immense pride if you get a patent. Doesn't matter it's one patent or 100 patents. So it's very important. Monetary benefits. So we get monetary benefits because once I think when you apply for invention disclosure, you'll get some money. When the patent is approved, you'll get some money. But when the patent is finally um shown in USPTO as an approved patent, so then I think you'll get some more money. And then if the company gets royalties from other companies, sometimes they share the royalties to the inventors. So that's also a benefit. Not that everybody does for monetary benefits, but most importantly, it's passion and personal satisfaction. That's why people do innovate and get the patents. So this is maybe controversial, but I just want to show that engineers innovate and researchers publish. So it's not that engineers innovate only, they can also publish. Same thing like researchers, they publish mostly, but they can innovate as well. So, but basic uh, separation as engineers, I think they have to innovate and researchers have to publish to get into academic recognitions and papers and probably for the students their MS degree, PhD degree, etc. So you need to publish. So that's very important. Actually, you learn more when you're doing research with your advisor. So that knowledge gain when you become an engineer, you have to use in the industry. So just don't do 8 to 5 job and then go home. And I think you need to have that passion to improve and develop some new products for your company. So that should be the motive of every engineer. Paper versus patent. I think I just want to show one slide. What is the difference between paper and patent? So technical paper, we all know. I think we all have written technical papers. So it's a result of research. So you do a lot of analysis. You go through a lot of papers, what was done before, and then come up with either improved design, etc. So you summarize that in a technical publication. So that becomes a paper. So it's basically, or it could be a science. So patent is a result of engineering a new product. So this is most of the engineers do patents. So it's basically science versus engineering. Cannot say which is more important. Both are important. So if you're working as an engineer in the industry, patents are important. If you're working in the uh, academic line, I think technical papers are very important. So real engineering. So this is basically, I want to say to the young engineers. So you understand the requirements. First, you understand what are the requirements you need to develop for the product. So most importantly, people spend a lot of time to go through all the requirements. There may be 40, 50 requirements, but out of that, only two requirements are the key requirements, two or three. So you need to understand those requirements first, most important requirements. It could be the gain for antennas, it could be the cross pole, it could be the bandwidth, and lately for air and ground applications, it could be the mass. It has to be lightweight, transportable, and sometimes it has to be very compact volume. So those are important. So understand the basic, what are the key requirements driving the design, and focus on those two or three. But if you try to go through all the 50 requirements, you'll never get a product out and never get a design out. Of course, the other are secondary aspects, but you have to understand the uh, primary requirements. And then think outside the box for solutions. So be persistent in your work. Don't get discouraged if, say, your design doesn't work. So you always can improve. You can make it bad, you can make it good. So it's also requires teamwork. Nowadays, you cannot work alone just on antenna. So sometimes you have to work with mechanical engineers. Sometimes you have to work with system engineers. Sometimes with manufacturing. That's also important how you manufacture. And always, I think, look into the cost of the product. So you have to make it cheap. So either in manufacturing or in the design itself, how to make it cheap, that is very important. And of course, develop the new capability. Otherwise, it won't be a patent. This is my view, so don't take it seriously. A patent is worth several publications and more. More because you get some monetary benefits as well. Whereas publications, you won't get benefits. In fact, you have to pay to the journal to get it published sometimes. It's also um, the patent takes typically 3 to 4 years. So whereas a paper, I think you can publish maybe within a year. So it takes much longer time to get the patent approved because you need to develop the hardware, you need to check various things, and at the end, I think if you develop a improved product, I think then you'll get a patent. So here is a small question for audience, patent question. So this is, you all know pencils. When we were in school, we used to have a pencil in our geometry box, then we have eraser. So we write something on the paper, and then if it is wrong, you rub it with the eraser and then rewrite again. So that's an invention. So this was done a long time back, maybe more than 200 years back. So this is a pencil invention. So now I think people come up with later some smart person come up. Hey, I have to carry eraser. I have to carry pencil. So I cannot. Why can't I combine both together? So then he has eraser on top of the pencil, and then you write it. If it is wrong, you can turn it around and erase it, and then rewrite again. So then it's a pencil with eraser. The question is, can B be patented if A has already a patent? So of course the answer is yes, and because this is an improvement of the product and it has a big advantage. So people sometimes forget the erasers, so you put everything together and then it becomes a pencil with eraser. So that's patentable and it has been patented. So next I'll go through how to innovate and obtain a patent. So innovation requires understanding of requirements. We talked about it, and then focus on key requirements. The knowledge of prior art. So you need to know what has been done before. So to do that, you have to do a lot of reading. So you can do either USPTO or European Patent Office or World WIPO. So you can get all the articles published and or all the patent is issued, and you can go and read them based on the topic. You can search topical search. You can do and get what are the prior patents approved. So you need analytical knowledge, you need a software knowledge, sometimes you need to simulate, and then more importantly, you need hardware knowledge because you need to, at the end, I think you need to develop a product. So hardware knowledge is very important for engineers. So just don't focus on EM simulations and this software, that software. I think they're important, but they're not as important as the hardware knowledge. So which basically see what are the type of antennas and what applications you can use. So maybe after certain years of experience, you don't need to go through all that. Once requirements are given, you know exactly what antenna you want to propose. So that's very important. And also you need to get experience, may not be deep experience, but at least you need to have knowledge of RF circuits behind that goes behind the antennas, like amplifiers, LNAs, uh, frequency converters, beamforming networks, digital beamformers, uh, power controls, etc. Mechanical, I think you need to know because antenna is nothing but probably 40% mechanical. Manufacturing is also important, so you need to know how to manufacture your hardware, meeting the tolerances, systems, and importantly, you need the experience on testing. So antenna testing is very important. There are several test ranges. So depending on the antenna type you develop, you have to test them. So you need to know what are the how to uh, I think Puneet is expert in the test ranges, so he can tell you how difficult it is to really do accurate tests. And novelty is very important. Otherwise, it's not a innovation. So hard work. So this is important because if you want to know what is prior art, of course you have to spend some time. So every week on Tuesdays you get all the ESPTO announces all the patents issued that week. So that comes every Tuesday. So if you click on antennas, you get almost about 400 issued patents every week. So out of that, maybe 10 or you need to go through all of them, but 10 or 15 of them may be more relevant to what you're doing. So you need to read them. So and then new applications are published every Thursday. So that gives you some you don't need to wait till patent is issued. You can see the applications, read them. So that comes every Thursday. So you spend enough time basically researching them. Once I think you start doing it, it becomes a practice. Every Tuesday you want to open USPTO website uh, and see what patents are issued. So it's at the end, I think the outcome is very sweet. And once USPTO says your patent is approved and granted, then I think you get very satisfying feeling. So people, a lot of people think about the patent first without doing any work. No, that's not the case. More important is the work. So complete the work first, and then think of patenting or not at a later stage. So first you have to do the work and develop a product. So I'll talk about patent procedure quickly. So there are three main patent sites: USPTO in US, uspto.gov, then European Patent Office, epo.org, then World Patent Office. You have the site there, so you can go through, and also you can do Google search. Sometimes Google search also gives you a lot of patents. If you know the inventor, he can type his name and you can get all the patents issued on his name. Sometimes the list is not complete, so you have to go through European Patent Office. Sometimes you have to go through World Patent Office and ESPTO. So first, I think once I think you decided to sort of go with the patent, you have to file invention disclosure with your company or yourself if you're patenting yourself. So then, if it is a company, you need to get approval for filing. So the IP, intellectual property board, will be there for most of the big companies. So the board will review your invention disclosure, and then they decide whether to go ahead with the filing the patent, or sometimes they may decide if it is too secretive, so they don't want to file for a patent because then they have to application they have to submit, and then people can read. So then they just say that this is more valuable to the company. So we decided to do instead of patent, we do as a trade secret. So selected disclosure are filed for patent. So each patent costs about 20K. So that's for filing fee, the lawyer fee who translates your invention into a patent application. So you have to prepare a PowerPoint package and attach it with the disclosure. So the PowerPoint package should be, it's more useful to the lawyer, patent lawyer, who basically drafts your patent. And of course, you need to talk to him, and he will call you. Couple of sessions, you go through back and forth, and then he'll understand what exactly your patent is, because as much broader knowledge, he may not have in-depth knowledge in your area, but most of them they catch very easily what is normal. They can go from there. So then once you file as a USPTO, and the USPTO examiners will review, so that will take a lot of time. So sometimes they say that out of your uh, out of some part of your patent may not be acceptable. So you have to, some of the claims they may reject, and you need to work with the examiner to explain him what is new about it and why it should be accepted. So that takes some time as well. So typically it takes about 3 to 4 years. So whereas paper takes about a year or so. So it's a long process to get a patent. So patent application typically have these. One is a title. I think you need to have the title which is broad enough, not very narrow title. So abstract it should have. So background, prior art, and publication. So you have to tell this is what other prior art uh, uh, you have used to develop this. So some background, some publications, so that examiners can go and read them, and then come back to your patent and see the differences. So sometimes actually the examiner himself um, might do his own research, and then he come up with some prior art which you missed it. So he'll send it to you. So you have to read and explain him uh, why your patent is different from the prior art. So if it is not, I think then your patent will not be accepted. But you can convince the examiner that it's different. Then he'll understand that, and he will agree. So you need to prepare detailed description about the patent and the drawings. So drawings are very important. Sometimes your patent lawyer, they'll have their own team, so they'll convert your drafts or drawings into their own drawings with numbering system, etc. So claims are the most important for any patent. So typically it has about 20 claims. So it doesn't have to be 20, but in that range. So sometimes it could be one claim, but sometimes it could be 30, 40 claims. So the broader claims are preferred. So out of the 20, maybe three broader claims or independent claims, they call it. So, and then rest are the claims will follow the main claims. Patents that are most difficult to copy are highly beneficial to companies because they bring the royalties, and the royalties sometimes yearly royalties for some of the big companies are about maybe $500 million or so. So that's why they have intellectual property board, and they have few lawyers working on that portfolio. So they spend some time. So there are also different types of patents. It's not just one patent. So the provisional, first when you apply for a provisional patent. The validity is 1 year. So provisional patent, you won't get issued as a provisional patent. You need to convert into a utility patent, which is very important because it has validity of 20 years. So this is the most preferred in patents. Design patent, does not protect the functionality of the patent, but it has validity of 15 years. It's very rare that people going to design patents. Some people actually go, some companies, especially software companies, but most of the aerospace or other hardware companies prefer utility patent. Trade secret. So this is important to the company because if you develop a product which is very useful to the company and for a long term, the company thinks disclosing outside may maybe may cause the company trouble in terms of its competitiveness. People can copy. So then the company's IP board decides how to protect it. If it is a trade secret, then they say, hey, this is trade secret. We'll give you. Of course, it has same patent value, but then you don't get a patent. So, but for the company, it's very important to get trade secrets as well. So you have to work with patent attorney for patent application submissions, and later when the examiner comes back with his comments, or he might say that certain claims are not approved. So you have to work with them, explain him, and it's a iterative process. So that's why it takes about 3 to 4 years. So I'll show you some examples here. So the different examples, this is basically based on my sort of patents which I have done in the past, and some I think are new patent applications. So just to let you know. So this is example one is a satellite antenna covering multiple orbits. So before, I think we used to do a design, say if it is a coverage over CONUS, continental United States or a country. So it has, for a geostationary orbit, it has different locations. So in US, it varies from 90° west to 120 degrees west. So that means wide range of orbital arc. So when you do the wide range, actually the coverage shape changes quite a bit. So people used to design specific satellites for each case. So because the coverage shape is different, so you need to optimize. So we have actually what we did is a single design. You don't need multiple designs. We do single design covering all multiple orbits, especially for broadcast satellite services working at Ku band and C band. So US patent number 6570528 was issued. Uh, my colleagues are Jack Bauer from Systems, Chi Chen Shu from Antenna, and Bob Ring from Propagation. So you can see different people are need to be involved to come up with the design. So this is the final design, I think, put on the first page of the patent. You can see number of satellites on the top, uh, maybe two extreme satellites. Then you can see how the coverage varies. And here the novelty is basically by using the roll and pitch bias of the satellite, we sort of bore side the antennas before launch, and then we basically optimize the gain using a common shape. Typically, they're used shaped reflectors. So the shape is optimized over all the orbital slots, but after pitch and roll biases are registered. Otherwise, you get very wide coverage and the gain will go down. So that's a novelty. So since it's identical design, then cost will go down quite a bit, and then schedule goes down too. So so significant cost savings for fixed satellite service and Boeing satellite service. So this has been used over 20 different satellites, direct broadcast satellites by DirecTV and also EchoStar or Dish. So and also in Europe actually they used and they have paid some royalties to the companies which I worked on these. Basically, it's Boeing satellite systems when I was working there. Second one is example is multiple beam antennas and high efficiency horns. So there are two patents on this issued. So this is for multiple beam antennas for direct broadcast, local channel broadcast, personal communication systems, and you have to use dual band high efficiency horns. Before, I think they used to be two antennas, one for transmit, one for receive. So we combined both functions into one. So number of antennas are reduced by half. And high efficiency horns gives the significant advantages compared to the conventional corrugated or other types of horns. So these are the two patents issued. And you can see on the top right hand side how the spot beams for local channel broadcasts are. So they are covering different designated market areas over CONUS. You can see the difficulty here is the beam sizes are different because the East Coast actually rains a lot, so you need to provide more gain there. So the beams are narrow. And the West Coast and Midwest, I think it doesn't rain that much, so you can use bigger beams. So when you do that, then you can see the beam spacing varies and the beam size varies. So how you do that? So for that, we developed actually Gaussian beam analysis, which you don't need to do any software. You can sit there and you can see, of course, each beam covers multiple designated market areas. So there are about 216 of them in the US. Los Angeles is number one based on population. New York is number one, sorry. Los Angeles is number two, and Chicago is number three, etc. And then this is the patent about high efficiency dual band horns. So it uses slope discontinuities. Before, I think you used to have step discontinuities that limits the bandwidth, so you cannot use that for dual band applications. So we have to go with slope discontinuities. So that's the novelty of the horn, but that combined with the reflector developments, I think these two patents are important. Have been used on many satellites, more than 60, both mainly for multiple beam antennas, mainly for local channel broadcast and personal communication systems which work at K and K bands, 20 and 30 gigahertz. So high efficiency horns for dual band operation. That's this I would say happened by accident. Example 3. So thermal vacuum testing typically when you qualify all the components, then you integrate with the satellite, and then before it launch, you have to go through thermal vacuum test. So everybody does that because that's a final qualification. So before, I think people used to do very expensive method. They're big echo absorber boxes. Actually, we used to. This was done at Lockheed Martin, so we used to get from Europe. So we used to lease from them. So those are very big boxes. So costs millions of dollars, and then to do the test, it takes about 3 to 4 months. So then I think Lockheed asked me to look into this and whether there's any other way we can do much faster, because you cannot wait. Some projects are very schedule driven, so you cannot wait 3 to 4 months to do TVAC testing. So that's when I think we come up with this idea of testing thermal vacuum of the satellite payloads using pickup horns. So this is much faster and cheaper. So 8 times faster and 8 times cheaper. So actually nowadays, I think they're using it probably within a week or so, 1 week for installment of all the hardware, MGSC, etc., and then 1 week for test. So Lockheed used it on about 12 satellites now, starting from Astra when I was working first. So it became a standard for now for all Lockheed Martin satellites. So there are 2 patents issued. And you can see this is basically the hardware which we developed. You can see this is basically absorber load. Put this in front of the horns. There are several horns in a satellite, probably there may be 5 or 6 antennas. So reflectors are folded, only you can see the horn. So you put this pickup horn in front of, say, what you see on the right side is a corrugated horn. So you don't touch it, but you put very close with certain distance, maybe 30 mil, 40 mil. And then basic idea is absorb all these horns are go about 2 kilowatts or 3 kilowatts of RF power, very high power. So you not only need to absorb all the power, but then when you absorb all the power, the heat will be dissipated. So you need to cool the hardware. So that is done through LN2 inlets and outlets. You can see on the side. So there is inlet and outlet for LN2. On the other side also. So basically, you take away the heat outside TVAC chamber. So you do this, install these on several horn antennas, 5 or 6, and you do at a time. So you don't need to open the TVAC chamber, which in the prior setups they used to do. They test one antenna, then they open the thermal vacuum chamber, and then go and set it up for the another antenna. Then they have to um, uh, again close the thermal vacuum chamber, and then they have to, by the time you get to the pressure, I think it will take like a few days. So that's why the used to take about 3 months. So with this, I think, so this is another example. I quickly go through. How much time I have, Puneet?
Yes, sir. You are having another 5 to 10 minutes. You can take. Then we will open for questions.
Okay, I think I'm almost done. So I just want
Yeah.
to show some
Sure.
examples. So this is the antenna. We sort of we didn't have space to accommodate another antenna. So there are already 6 antennas. So they needed one more antenna to do the Ka-band spot beams for this particular application. So we are using actually multiple beam antennas at Ku band. So you can see the reflector. I'm showing only one feed, but it's a shaped beam in this case. Yeah, that's one shaped reflector. So you all know that when you basically synthesize the phase from the shaped reflector to fit the coverage, because it's not a spot beam, you have to fit like coverage like Turkey or so, or India. So the reflector is shaped, but they want to generate spot beams also at certain cities away from this coverage area. So how you do that? Because at Ka band. So only way to do that is actually we come up with a concept where you place the Ka band spot beam horns. You see three of them on the left side. So they're defocused quite a bit. Actually, when you defocus that far, you take away the linear phase term of the shaped reflector. So that means it becomes almost like a parabolic reflector, and only some minor variations will be there because you have to shape to fit the coverage. So that those things, I think, if you can take the performance hit, so you can get very focused beams by using this method, and we have done that. So I think that was first time people have used a shaped reflector to generate the spot beams. So instead of two different antennas, we have one antenna. So low cost is easier accommodation on the spacecraft, especially when you have so much payload, C band, Ku band, Ka band, etc. So these are some of the things I have been working over the past 4 months, and the patents have been applied there in the process. So this is the wide coverage lightweight antennas for air and ground applications. So we call it pen cap and bunker antennas. US patent pending on both of them. So this is for the future protected forward communication systems and EAVs. You can see the EAV there. The two antennas are on the wings. You can see one covers 2 pi steradians, other covers 2 pi steradians. So the challenge here is the size and mass. So you have to come up with the size very, very small, and mass. For us, the given mass is about 20 grams. Basically, we could do that with the 10 grams and size much smaller than what they gave the envelope. So about half an inch size and about 0.6 inch or 0.8 inch depth. So you can put on the two wings and get complete 4 pi steradians with that. This is how it looks like. It has a radome. So key thing here is apart from the compact size and mass, I think it has to be protected by the radome because the conditions are different for EAVs. So we call it pen cap antenna, and 2 pi steradians. You can see the radiation patterns of the 2 pi steradians. We make the gain very easily. So you can see the radome, Rexolite radome on the top, and then the actual antenna on the bottom, very compact size. So there's some tricks to make it smaller. And then it has front to back ratio spec was about 14 dB. So we have to shape the ground plane to meet that spec. So that's also important. So next one is for protected forward communication. Basically, soldier carries these at different radios at different frequencies. So challenge here is the soldier when he is standing. So you can see the backpack on the when the soldier is standing. So this is basically all the radios need to be incorporated there, covering from L band, S band, Ku band for CDL, and Ka band, and also K band and also Ka band for to communicate with satellites, wideband global satellites. So all the radios are incorporated on the back. You can see this one is for low data rate communication, so that the soldier can communicate with other soldiers in the battlefield or to the headquarters. So the antenna has to be very small and it has to be deployable. What you see is when the soldier is standing, you don't want the antenna to be close to the head, so it has to be deployed at certain height above the helmet. So when the soldier is lying down, you don't want this to interfere with his ability to do the functions. So it has to be folded into a small volume, what you see in the top right. So this is basic antenna is on the blue top you can see. And the conduit actually is used to develop the deployable aspect of it. And then there's a Rexolite tubing. Then there's a clip. So you basically remove the clip and then it deploys into a long by about probably 15, 16 inches above the head of the helmet of the soldier, so that he doesn't get bombarded with induced field ratios. It's for safety reasons. So this is the patents you get. It's very, this has to cover 4 pi iridians. So when you standing in there, it has to cover everywhere. So there will be low flying aircrafts, there will be satellites, there will be, you need to communicate to the ground, so headquarters, etc. So a lot of coverage. So this is the shape of the antenna. So we were given about 150 grams. So actually we made it within 100 grams. So can't say too much about the antenna, but you can see the blue lines are actually the radome Rexolite. So when you design, you have to design with the radome itself because it's in the battlefield. So it has sand, it has rain, it has dust, so it has to survive. And then what is important for this is field trials. So they asked us actually when we presented, actually they said how long it takes to make a prototype. So they were expecting about 1 year or so. So we said probably maybe 3 to 6 months. So we developed that within 2 months, and we're giving them next month about 20 of them for the field trials. So once the field trials are done, then they'll order 1,500 units like this. So the one on the left side came as actually in one of the meetings when we were doing the bunker antenna. So then they said we have another application UAV. So can you? But the size has to be small. Can you make it? We made it actually. So segmented antenna. This one is with the very wide bandwidth ratio, 60 to 1. So this also came up actually 2 months back. So 60 to 1 bandwidth ratio, we all know that there's no antenna exists with that sort of performance. So typically people do 10 to 1, 8 to 1, maybe 20 to 1 at the most. So it has to be compact weight, lightweight, about less than 45 pounds. So the beams have to scan through gimbals. So very wide scan, so plus minus 90 degrees conical scan. And it's mainly for MIMO type application. So it's very high data rates, going more than 100 gigabits per second. So it's for future 6G and 100G applications. So how we did it? So basically we segmented the antennas into 3 parts. One is low gain and low band antenna, medium band antenna, and then high band antenna. So it has to fit within 24 inch by 24 inch, but actually we could make it within 19 inch by 19 inch. So its cost is very important and mass is very important. So we made it into, we use COTS rigid horns for low band 1 to 8 gigahertz, and then high efficiency horns for 8 to 20 gigahertz, and then the ADE type reflector antennas for 20 to 60 gigahertz. So these three are packed actually. Each has 2 ports actually, LCP, RCP for the mid-band antenna and the high-band antenna. Low-band antenna is LP, so it has both polarizations, vertical and horizontal. So basically there's 6 ports, the 3 antennas. Then we use like a MIMO type system. And this is the overall gain you get over from 1 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz. So we were given about maximum 40 dB gain, but actually we extended to 60 gigahertz. So we are getting about 44 or so. And these are the computed patterns at different frequency bands, low band, mid band, and high band. Key feature is the mass is less than 45 pounds, including the gimbal. So you can see the gimbal mechanism and the tripod. So where the soldier can carry, you can actually hold the tripod, put in the bag, and then carry it. Or when it has to be deployed, then you can put the tripod, the gimbal system, and then the antenna. So there's a common platform between the gimbal and the antenna. So this is actually we are working on a vehicular antenna or missile application, next generation missile applications. Can't talk too much about it, but I can show you what is novelty about it. So this is the prior art, basically whatever the previous vehicles have this sort of patterns, basically the one in red. So when you do that, actually you can see there is some dropouts, actually the amplitude and phase. So that's not acceptable. So initially we came up with two LP antennas spaced around 180 degrees around the periphery of the vehicle, so that we used actually cross pole so that the uh, resonances on the overlapping regions are cancelled out and it doesn't create any nulls. So that was okay for a while. But the phase variation is about 20 degree per degree. So, but then later they came up, hey, we want to reduce the complexity on the vehicle. So we cannot control the yaw. So that means the phase has to be very stringent. So they have reduced it from 20 degree per degree to 2 degree per degree. So that means this pattern is not acceptable. So I have to come up with something on the right side. So this is the azimuth variation of the amplitude. Phase is also very similar to that. So from here to there, how to go there. So I think we have done that. Can't say too much about it, but it's progress, and actually we applied for a patent as well. So key thing is minimal phase variation, low loss, high gain, has a tri-band, so basically L1, L2 for GPS and also S-band for telemetry and tracking. Has to be lightweight, the low cost for because there's so many of them, so cost is very important factor. So the trick I think we did that is we did all this. Of course, if you want to get a uniform pattern like that, you need to have more elements around. But here we have more elements, but without a BFN. So people have done with the BFN with some different type of element. And also we reduce the mass because we don't use any dielectric. It is air filled, so mass is very lightweight. And right now we're going through prototype development. Modular phased array, I think typically phased array, they're not modular. You design the phased array with certain number of elements. Here the idea is to make it modular. You can go from a single element to 16 by 16. So where you vary the gain and vary the ERP. Uh, so that is the phased array. Then you can see you can do amplitude taper, you can do phase taper, you can reduce the side lobes if needed, which I think you need in the operational situation. So this is the scan bore side view without scan, and then it can actually the array can scan almost 80 degrees. So this is I think scanning to 70 degrees shown. And then you can spoil the beam and make it very wide beam like Omni as well. So, and this is the ground antenna. I think this is the last chart. So, before we used to have Air Force. This is AFRL contract. So they used to have a lot of ground stations to communicate with satellites at S-band and Ka-band. You can see the S-band is, they use FSS subreflector, S-band feed with a long cable, and then Ka-band horn here. So this is covering only 3 bands. LS is a single feed. And then, sorry, it's actually 4 element array. And Ka-band horn is a single horn. So you can see the parabolic reflector surface. They have different sizes going from 3 meters to 13 meters. So this is one of them. So they, instead of 3 bands, they want to introduce 6 more bands, going from another L band, X band, K band, Ka band, low and high bands. So when you do this, of course, this concept doesn't work. So FSS, you cannot design FSS covering all these bands that are closely spaced. So you have to remove the frequency selective surface, so which we did. And then you don't need this feed, which behaves like a prime focused feed, and the cable you don't need, and you don't need the struts. So we remove the struts, we remove the feed on the top. Everything is combined into a feed array like this. And then we have a subreflector, similar to ADE concept, but exactly not actually displays ellipsoid subreflector. It's a bit different. And then the feed is a coaxial feed. So it has basically three different bands. So one is actually waveguide, which is high frequency, is in the middle. Then you have another coax, which is around it, another coax, which takes care of the lowest band, like L and S bands. So it has both the tracking and the capability at three different frequency bands. And then the performance is 1 dB better because you don't have the struts, you don't have the loss of the cable. So everything is highly efficient. Get about 1 dB improvement. The main thing is we refurbish the existing reflector surface. We don't need to change. We use the same reflector surface. We remove the struts, and then we remove the feeds, and then put a new feed there with a subreflector. So this, I think we finished the design study last year. So we are developing a prototype now, which we need to deliver by end of the year. I think that's probably the last one. Say. And then at the last one, I think I want to say that innovation should be the daily part of engineers' professional career. You cannot sort of plan the innovation, but you always have to keep innovative mind when you go to work. So don't just take the routine thing and say, okay, here is what was done before, we'll do the same thing. So sometimes you need to go outside that, and sometimes you may have to do that because you are told to do that, but sometimes you have to that may not meet your requirements, so you have to develop a new one. So always keep your minds open and think outside the box. And as I said, innovation is not difficult, but you have to work in a focused way. So finally, I would like to thank Punit Mishra, Chair IEEE Bangalore section, for inviting, coordinating, and moderating this talk. And also thanks to Professor S.N. Singh for supporting this through Indian Council. So that's all I have. So I'm open for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for sharing your wonderful presentation and giving all the perspective about innovation, how to start, how to do, and what are the things one should consider. And I was really happy to see that you have started with example of an pencil, how pencil can be improved with eraser at the back end. So that was a very, very simple but very important information that how one can, by doing some addition or change in an existing product or idea, one can improvise it and then one can try to get a patent. Starting from there, you have given a lot of examples what you have done, and most importantly, I would like to say that you told that at the age of 50 you got your first patent, but within, I can say, within last 10 to 15 years you have reached to number 56. So one can see that how quickly one can achieve patents if you know the process, as well as if you start thinking in that direction. And as you have requested, I have invited Professor Debatos Guha as well as Professor Dr. Rajiv Jyoti also to this panel, and both of them have already joined. So I would like to formally welcome both of them. And you have multiple places told that engineers do innovation and researchers do patent, researchers do only publication. So I think we will have perspective from Professor Debatos Guha as well. And you have covered most of the things with respect to US Patent Office. I would like to inform all our viewers that the Indian Patent Office is also functional and you can apply for Indian patent as well, in addition to the US patent, European patent, and worldwide patent, what Dr. Sudhakar Rao has explained. If you are having any questions, please type in the Q&A window. I would be taking up. But before taking up the questions and answers, we are having two more panelists. They are very, very distinguished, well-known, internationally acknowledged people. So I would start with Rajiv Jyoti sir, who is a Deputy Director, Microwave Remote Sensing Area, Space Application Center, ISRO. And he is also one of the pioneers in India, at least I can say, with respect to antenna technology. And he is having several patents, I think more than 15 to 20 patents on his name. So we have heard Dr. Rao about US patent process and how they are doing. I would like to know your perspective with respect to Indian patent process, as well as what we are doing in Indian space program with respect to antennas, because you mostly work in antennas and microwave remote sensing. So sir, over to you. Can you just put some thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you, Puneet. Am I audible?
Yes sir, please go ahead.
Yeah. First, I must congratulate India Council to bring a very innovative discussion by organizing this program, and because very informative and interesting talk by Dr. Sudhakar Rao, who is a veteran in global space industry, well known in IEEE, and has such a laurel patents and achievements. And he gave a very 360-degree view of innovation. I think he and how very interestingly. In my opinion, innovation in technology is an art of doing work. It is nothing that you have to do special effort of or making sure that you have to write a patent. It is the way the art you have to inculcate into your culture, particular job. And after under for any whenever any problem, any student or a researcher or a PhD student, she always first look towards the prior art. What are done? What were the other ways of solving the same problem? So we always get then we have to produce some new ideas and methods, and that is what we call innovation. When we say that we get idea or we got a new method or solving the same problem which others have traveled. In my 32 years of experience in ISRO journey, I have a strong opinion that unless until you encounter more challenges and problems, then you get more opportunities to innovate. Uh, we must have to think the way the today's program says, what we have to do, why I should do it the way others have done it, and how I can make it different, and how I different from others. So if we do implement these three questions, I think the innovation can be done in a very, it will come as an offshoot of the the particular way of doing the work. And the one quote comes to my mind is that in a day of the Vivekananda, that in a day when you don't come across any problem, for sure you are not
Yes.
on a, you are not traveling on a right path. That is, you are traveling on a wrong path. So that's what if we are finding out the easiest solution which is already available, then we are not doing the we are not to copy anybody's ideas. We not to do the same way the others have done. We have to find out another way of doing it. As Puneet wanted me to say something about how in an Indian scenario, this is
Yes.
basically patent is a very important in terms of socio-economic development for any they call institute or industry or in a nation. And ISRO always has encouraged innovations in many ways, and that is comes from the motivation statement the from the our Vikram Sarabhai, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, who was our founder of ISRO, that we must be second to none in the application of technologies to the real problems of man and society. So, which itself says that that we have to find out a way which should be second to none. So we have to find out whether it's in a process or it is to it is in any of the area of the technologies. Now, in Indian scenario, I've seen that when the patents we are not aware, right at the age when the at the time when student comes to do his PhD research work or to do his join any institute. We get busy into doing the projects, and then we solve the problem, and then we start writing paper, which is very well known. But patent is a very important activity, as Dr. Sudhakar Rao very beautifully presented that this is also equally important, and especially in industry this is very necessary. um, and then this can we have to recognize, like in ISRO, what we do, we have institutionalized in the organization itself the encouragement and recognition of the young minds, so that they can work with experienced veteran and participate with the new ideas and blend with the fixed ideas which are there. So the more openness and listen to the more young brand, which is going to create a more ideas. Whether in terms they are in different forms, we have technological development programs, we have respond programs, and we have very openness in our project design reviews, critical design reviews, peer reviews, pre-shipment reviews, whether it is about any of the space mission, interplanetary missions. The participation of young minds is very important. So that is what is we have seen that this has given a lot of dividend to ISRO, to the space industry. And this, I feel that in India, if we see the space industry in globally also, there are a lot of scope is there of innovation in simulation and testing methods, as Dr. Sudhakar was mentioning about the thermovac example which he was giving, the how to test the requirement. The challenge was there, so they have to come out with a new testing method to save time. And in space entity, it's very important to have a robust data to simulate possible space scenarios in on ground. At the time of after the launch, we need to understand the and simulate the possible scenarios. So that is so a lot of innovations is being done there. And then even in the smallest area, the very which is all which can be a new process, like even do a sealing of a do this package sealing, how to do this particular fabrication or soldering methodology for but to withstand the different temperatures. That also gives us a lot of opportunity for getting into innovation. And then there are a lot of I came across one challenge. One was challenge put to us was ISRO when they started IRNSS, their navigation satellite program. Most of the international players were the frequency allocation was done for L1, the different bands of L band, that is L1, L2, L5. But ISRO was given a totally different band by ITU, that is L and S band. So to accommodate this widely separated band, so this was a challenge. So we could come across, our team came together and we all worked together how to this with the same space, because cost and space is very much important in the space industry. So that's area where we always look forward. So we could come out with this, overcome this challenge, and we have a patent on this. And apart from space, there are many societal common need also can be a spin-off of space-based technology. So I think that the if you come across a patent, if you think that you want to do a patent, it's not less than doing a research on the given topic and come across with the attorney, the questions which are come from the patent office, and then you have to answer. So in a way, you come across all the what, why, and how you come to know, and then you it's easier. It looks difficult initially, but if you do your homework properly after completing your job, one can always find a patent from the from your given task if you have done your things properly. I fully agree with Puneet and Dr. Sudhakar Rao. He was telling I also, my first patent came in 2008. That was almost 20 years later when I joined ISRO. And that the reason for that is that the importance of, then after that it became, say, is known, and you have to understand the questions of each and every. If you are taking a patent in India, you are taking it, you should must take across international patent also, and try to solve see that question which comes, which you have to defend yourself. It's nothing like a less than doing a PhD in your career. uh, I think I could summarize this to the extent that it's the art of doing a work which has to be continued, as Dr. Sudhakar also said. It's not it cannot be inculcated. It has to be inculcated from the beginning itself. Thank you, Puneet.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for providing your nice perspective on Indian scenario of patenting, as well as sharing your thoughts how patent is important and the process followed in ISRO, which is very, very important. Now we are also honored to have Professor Debatos Guha, who has been, I think, today actually we are very honored to have this trinity, I can say, who all are in antenna field. They may be knowing they all three are people are stalwarts, and I can definitely say they are trinity of Indian antenna community. So, Professor Debatos Guha, I know what is, as an academician, what is your perspective on patent process as well as innovation? I know you have done wonderful things on antennas, and I think a few hundreds of papers you have already published, and you are the second person, I think, in IEEE APS Society in India, who I think first person who to be in IEEE fellow. So this is all distinguished discrimination with rest of people who as well as practicing engineer. I would like to know your perspective on this whole idea of innovation, what, why, and how. What Dr. Rao has told, and he has told that researchers they do research, whereas the engineers they do patenting process. So I would like to know how you see this statement specifically.
Well, Puneet, thank you. Thank you for your comment and inviting me to the seminar. There are two perspectives I'm telling you. One is, it is not Dr. Rao's credit. It is absolutely your credit to put the right person on right topic. Excellent choice, because no one in our known periphery could be better than Dr. Rao in this particular field of innovation. So I know him personally for a long time, and his contribution to antenna technology, and he spent throughout his life in top industries and survived through lots of innovations. So excellent talk, and how passionate he was, because it is probably the most passionate thing to him. So no, I'm not going to talk on anything about patent, neither
Yes.
paper. Puneet, please excuse
Yes.
me. I just put one small question to our speaker, because for a long time we could not hear his voice. Dr. Rao, good morning.
Morning, Professor Guha.
Good morning. Well, I have a small question.
A fight between you and me, between academy and industry. So his question is very.
Exactly, I'm asking the same question to you. So you rightly guessed it. That which one is, you'll have to tell they're not equal. I really want your honest answer. That which one is more exciting to you, because you have written lots of top papers in top journals, and no question about your patents and the huge number of patents, more than 50 US patents you have produced. So which one is more exciting to you? One is patent, another is paper. And along with another point, which one takes more time to prepare? The simple question.
Yeah, it's a simple question, but a difficult answer. So if you ask me which one is more important, it depends on the age. So when I was young and when I was doing my research at IIT Madras with my professor, then my whole aim was to publish paper. So that's the most important thing. And once I see my paper in IEEE AP transactions, I was so happy. So we didn't get a copy, so I have to go to Madras Institute of Technology by train and then go to the library and look at my paper. Those days, it's not available like what we have now online. So the actual magazine used to come to India after 2 months. So
Right.
so then I have to go to MIT library to see my paper and then get a copy and show it to my professor. So that was very exciting. And I think when you're a student, I think it's seeing your research paper in a journal is very most exciting, I would say.
Right.
I started and still I was writing papers. So when I was in Canada actually working, so I think looks like Rajiv and me are late bloomers. So we're not that productive. Looks like when we were young, but actually when I was at SPAR, never thought of patenting anything. I was there almost like 14 years. Then I was working so hard on proposals, the programs, the hardware, learning new tricks and establishing ranges. So there's no time even to think of patent. So that time, of course, some people suggested, but I said no time. So that's why my first patent, when I moved to US, the Boeing actually, I was also not planning to patent it. It happened by accident. So our management said, hey, Sudhakar, why don't you patent this? This seems to be a new concept and will be useful. So I said, okay, I'll wrote a small thing and I gave it to the intellectual property board. So then they approved and worked with the patent lawyer. And I think that's the first time probably my patent came within 1 year. So, but when I received my first patent, it was not as exciting as when I got my first paper published in a journal. So it was okay. I mean, but after that, I think it became a habit to sort of write a patent, and I continued that at Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and now at Northrop Grumman. And hopefully, I think another 1 year, 2 years, that's it. So I think both are exciting, I would say. So if you're a researcher, definitely publishing a paper and seeing your paper research work in a journal is very exciting. But once you're an engineer, I think then I think companies will also depends on the company uh, initiative. Companies like they don't care about papers that much, though some companies care, but majority they like patents. So when you're an engineer, I think patent makes uh, more important achievement compared to paper because patent is a bit hard, I think, in terms of because it's you have to make sure that it takes a lot of time to develop a
Time.
patent hardware or so it takes about 3 to 4 years, but development, including development, maybe about 5 years. So, but whereas paper, probably you can maybe make within 1 year or if you're working hard. So both of them, I think, are important, I would say. So as an engineer now, I have my more preferences towards patents. But when I was young researcher, I think publications meant a lot to me.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
not saying that.
Thank you. So some other people may be waiting for questions.
Yeah. So I will be quickly
With
going
questions.
now. Few questions I will take. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Sure.
very much for joining us. And the first question is, can we publish a paper before patent or patent before paper? I think this is the question everybody has in their mind. So can you just answer, sir, Professor Dr. Sudhakar?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think a lot of people, I think, mistaken by that the process. So you cannot publish anything if you're patenting. At least apply for a patent. So what happens is there is a date. So you apply for patent disclosure, then the company says, okay, you go ahead and patent, and then you work with the attorney. And then you want the attorney to sort of put the application as quickly as possible, because if a similar thing happens one day before, then your patent is rejected. So the timing is important. So first time when you write then the attorney files to the patent office, so the date is given. Okay, this is the date where so and so has given submitted a patent application. So that's important because other patents they may follow. If the guy comes 1 week later, comes up with similar things, so it will be rejected. So whoever applies first, I think that's he gets it. So secondly, I think on the whether we can publish, yes. So you don't publish before your application is there in the patent office, so you can actually publish afterwards. So any publication you do, you have to inform them. And there's nothing wrong in publishing because it's already there. Your date, everything is done. So, and then people, once a patent is given, I think it has a validity of 20 years. So 20 years, if a copy, then they have to pay royalty. But sure, I think a patent can be. Maybe certain limitations might be there, so you have to go to the company. So some cases, I think frequency might be critical. So some cases, bandwidth might be critical. So you have to publish it in a normalized way without mentioning. So sometimes we can say antenna is this much relative to wavelength and etc. So I have done that. Some of my patents are already published. So I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I think answer is first you have to file patent, get number that you have already filed, and then you can proceed for the publication. Another
Yes.
question was there on same thing, that can patented idea be published? Yes, it can be published. And already Dr. Sudhakar Rao has explained. Then how much fee for patent? Already he has answered. Yeah, you are also writing that answer is received. Another interesting question is, if two-person innovate same thing, then who will get the chance? I think you have already replied that who will file the patent before, that person will
Yes.
get the credit, if I am correct.
Yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. Whoever files it first, I think he gets the rights for the patent. The guy
Can
might
we
have-
patent?
The guy
Yeah,
might
sir.
have invented before you, but it's all depends on the publication date.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Next question is, can we patent our work which is already published by us in a journal? Answer is no, but still I would like to know from Dr. Rao.
Generally, no, but some cases maybe yes. If you sort of go into specifics and more product related aspects a bit more, I think. But then, because they may not get royalties, they might sort of say that hey, you're already published. So, and when you go to the company, you have to tell them that hey, this is published. I'm patenting this idea. So, in certain cases, yes, it's possible you can patent it, but most cases that's not preferred by the companies. So, if you are doing individually, I think it's okay. But then there is no point in patenting because you don't get any value for it. So if somebody copies and it's already published, they may say your publication came prior to patent. So we just followed the publication. So theoretically you can do that, but it's not a preferred mode of doing things. So you publish after patent is applied and you get a publication date.
Thank you, sir. So then next question is, what is your opinion on being able to improve a current concept to innovation?
Can you repeat that, Puneet?
What is your opinion on being able to improve a current concept or apparatus to innovation? Whether it is an innovation or not, that's what he wanted to know.
Oh, definitely it's an innovation. So
Yeah.
if you can devise something which has extended capability compared to what you have. So in terms of, say, for example, bandwidth, in terms of gain or maybe compactness or a different way of doing, cheaper way of doing. Yeah, definitely. It's an improvement to an existing hardware. You can do
And
that.
another interesting question: what is the safe platform to show or publish your idea? As as many of us innovate, but are scared that someone will steal our ideas.
So that's why, I mean, your ideas, I think you have to file it quickly because it could happen. So if you're working with a team, it happened some cases, not in my case, but same two people actually working in it separately, knowing each other. So on the same sort of hardware. So it became a big issue, and the company has to basically say, okay, both are not valid. You guys work like a team, and then you're applying separately without putting another guy as an inventor. So this is not valid. And, it's unethical. So I think idea is basically when you're working on innovation, don't disclose it unless you already applied for it. But of course,
Thank you,
it's
sir.
teamwork. So you have to discuss with your teammates if you're working with mechanical engineer, RF engineer, system engineer. Sometimes you have maybe 4 to 5 people as a co-inventor. So you have to discuss with them.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So we are already approaching 8:40. So I will take only one or two more questions and then we will wrap up. We planned for up to 8 o'clock, but already we are 8:40. So question is, as technology keep on changing, today we claim something, but after 3 or 4 years, claim becomes so much used at the time of examining patent. How shall we deal such cases?
Yeah, I think, say, for example, you get a patent today. So after 3 years, they come up with a new concept. So if it is patented, then of course people use that concept. So they don't want to pay royalty on your patent. So because the other one, which basically have more capability compared to your patent, so people use it. So nothing wrong in that. That is a continuation of technological improvements. So you design one thing, so I improve a bit, and then I have a patent. You have a patent, and then Rajiv comes after 6 months, come up with even improved patent. So he'll get a patent. So it's up to the people who want to use your patent. So they think that they want to use most advanced patent, so they'll go for it, and then they'll get the royalty. So, but all 3 patents are valid. It's a question of time. So we know that whatever the patents we have, like horn antennas, like 20 years back, they have improved so much, so the new patents coming. So, and then the validity of the patent is only 20 years. So
Yeah.
if it's not extended, I think you won't the person won't get any royalties, or the company won't get any royalties.
Thank you, sir. Another question is being asked is, being an Indian working in US, probably can you tell why Indian companies and academics lack in getting patents? Very tricky question.
It's not. I think I see a lot of Indian patents nowadays. Like Rajiv, ISRO is doing a lot of patents. Rajiv has about 20 patents himself. So I think it's not. It depends on the company. Maybe most of the companies are they're looking at their bottom lines, and they don't have any IRAD development or to develop the new things. So they may not be. But all the big companies in US, either Boeing or Lockheed or Northrop Grumman, they have a special intellectual property portfolio. So their main job is to see how many patents we have this year, how we expand to the next year. So they have motivational speeches for all the engineers, and then basically sometimes I have to give some talks to the engineers, motivate them. So, but in India also now I see more and more patents even coming from the academic side. So I think the things are changing. I think government is supporting a lot. Before maybe 20 years back, we hardly hear any patent from Indians. But now we see more and more because of the government is encouraging innovation and technology. So they want to do like ISRO, they want to do everything indigenous. So same like DRDO, I think they want to have everything indigenously developed. So there's a lot of scope for patenting and inventing in India now. So compared to maybe 20, 30 years back.
Yeah. So next question is, sir, how Indian patents differ from US patent? I think process is same, but only with respect to the timings as well as fees, there is a change. Otherwise, almost process is the process remains same for any patenting process. If I'm correct, can you just answer that, sir?
Yeah, process is same, but any patent, even if I apply in US, the patent office examiner will go through all patents, whether a patent in China, patent in India, patent in Europe, patent in Japan, all other countries. So if somebody has done this, then he will sort of mention, hey, this is patented in Japan. But of course, the concept wise, but if there is no patent in the US or India, I think he might allow that. But as long as it's some improvement compared to that or something different compared to that.
So now we will take last question, sir. Already I have taken a lot of questions and I can see multiple questions coming out, but due to the paucity of time and I can see already 500 people are still there. But I request all of you, if you are having any questions, please directly write to Dr. Sudhakar Rao. His mail ID is skravks@yahoo.com. You can just write to him and I'm sure that he will respond to you. Last question is, sir, you spoke extensively about innovation. My question is, how is innovation valued at? What are the parameters to evaluate the innovation?
Well, I think the primary parameter is how many patents we have. Right? So how many patents we have, how many that's for generally people, if you say if you're an engineer and have one patent and one trade secret, that's a big thing. So I think it helps them in growing their career. They can get more promotion, so they get more difficult jobs, more challenging jobs. So I think patenting is very important. So publications, they don't get that much weight in industry, which is a bit surprising. But some people actually value publications also. So they let you participate in IEEE activities. They encourage actually people to do that. But I think some companies value papers as well. So I think it's important for engineers to do both. So try to innovate, but more importantly, you have to work like engineers. So you need to engineer a product first, which is more important. People forget that. Don't go with the idea that I want to publish my work or I want to patent my work. So finish the product, be happy with, make your customer happy and make your company happy, and then think of the patenting. But first, you have to do the work. Hope I
Thank you, sir.
answered, Puneet.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for spending your precious time. I think almost now we are close to 2 hours you have spent with. So thank you very much for providing a wonderful perspective on innovation. And I would also like to thank Professor S.N. Singh, Rajiv Jyoti sir, as well as Professor Devatosh Guha for joining us and providing their wonderful perspective. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us from across globe, I can see, and still they are with us even after 2 hours. Thank you very much. And hopefully we will be having again next Sunday another webinar with another experts from Bangalore section as well as India Council. Thank you very much. Thanks to
How
all of you.
many, Puneet, I have a question to you. How many webinars are you
Yeah.
conducting per week?
Yeah, that I will tell you offline, sir.
Okay. No, thanks very much. I
Okay,
think
thank you.
you're doing a wonderful job as Bangalore section chair, and I think if somebody asks me who is the most active section, I would say definitely Bangalore is the most active and most productive section, all because of your leadership and your members as well.
No, sir, we have initiated this in Bangalore section, but we are finding a very, very good, what you can say, healthy competition among other sections also. So other sections are also doing a lot of good activities in India. So they all are doing wonderful things. That way, I will say. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words and encouragement.
Thanks, Puneet.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you, Dr. Sudhakar. Thank you, Dr. Guha, and all
Thank you
participants.
all for attending, and thanks for all the questions, and hope I have answered you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good day and good night to all Indian participants. Thank you.
Can go now and sleep.
Yes.